Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest issue of Comic Book Gentlemen, the podcast where we use our decades of being giant nerds to discuss the most divisive issues in the fandom. I'm your host, Greg, joined by my constant co-host, Dave. Dave, how's it going?
Very well. I
Yeah,
guess
glad to
this
hear
would be the alternate episode.
that. The alternate. Well, yeah, we should have. I'll pretend to be. What's an alternate version of Greg? I don't know. Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider's the worst. I hate that character.
No,
Evil Greg. So
evil
yeah,
Greg.
as Dave alluded to, and from the title of the podcast, today we're talking about alternate universes in comic books, which in my opinion is kind of like one of the most like used tools in a writer's tool belt when it comes to comic books. But
Yeah.
I had this thought today.
Mhm.
As our more experienced reader, I'll say that, Dave. What like has alternate universes always been a part of comic books, or what was it like when you were first starting reading? Were there a lot of alternate universes, or what was the situation?
I think the first alternate universe type comic I remember coming out, and it was fairly. I want to say it was late '80s, early '90s, maybe. Was What If?
Okay.
Right. So it was like, and that was just a comic by issue. Just we're going to come up with a concept of something weird that transpired and just fly at her. Like I remember the one that stuck out to me all the time was the what if Peter Parker had kept the symbiote.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And that was probably the first one that really stuck out to me. Along with, at one point, the DC and Marvel converged and did the amalgam
Oh yeah.
universe, where it was like you had two, a DC and a Marvel superhero, and they just crushed them together. So like it was Batman and Wolverine were the same guy.
That's freaking sick.
So Captain America and Superman,
Yeah.
like it was there. So those are the first like obvious ones that I remember.
Hmm.
But I wouldn't say that it was like it always cropped up in comics as like in the regular series. A good example of that would be oh pretty much anything in X-Men, because they just
Yeah.
Days of Future Past was a great example. Like it's an alternate kind of timeline. It was only a couple issues, and then they were back to the regular. But what they do now, as far as doing like whole sets or even whole run issues, that wasn't really a thing.
Yeah, really fascinating. I think I was watching a video with by Comic Tropes, one of our guys that we bring up quite a lot on. You should check him out. He has some great stuff. But I
Yeah,
think when I was watching one of his videos and he talked about this topic, it was one of those things of there was like they didn't touch on it until it was DC had explained why some of the original like superheroes like the Flash and Green Lantern were so much different in the 50s and 60s compared to like when they started to modernize it in like the 70s and 80s type of thing. So for example,
yeah,
according to him, one of the biggest examples of alternate universes was how they explained the Flash. And you had like the
right,
guy with the hat and whatever Flash, but then you had Barry Allen Flash, and like he was an alternate universe. And then that leads into the whole new 50 Infinite Crisis on Infinite Earths and all that stuff,
right.
and all that fun stuff. So for myself, it's funny because like I said, alternate universes have always just been a thing in comic books. Like, I remember long-time listeners will know this. My main comic book that I read was the Ultimate Universe. Like, that's how I got
Yeah.
really into comic books, was the Ultimate Universe from Marvel. And it's really funny now that it's coming back, which is one of the reasons we want to do this episode, was the fact that,
Mhm.
2024 was the year of, hey, let's bring back alternate universes like Ultimate, and then DC's doing their Absolute Universe now. So
Yeah.
before we get in kind of the nitty gritty, what are your general thoughts on alternate universes? Do you like it, or do you think it's kind of like, skip this issue, it's kind of whatever?
I think sometimes it's really just hit and miss. And it depends on how they're doing it. Like within the regular stream of comics, I thought the way they handled like Age of Apocalypse was amazing, because they just stopped the run on everything, and you started receiving these new issues of comics for 4 issues or so. And it was this alternate universe where Apocalypse had just kind of taken over,
Hmm.
and that was great. That spun out really nice. Some of the other ones where they just kind of dip their toe in, they're hit and miss.
Hmm.
And I think same thing with the some of the miniseries that they do. Like House of M was, I thought, amazing.
Hmm.
um a more recent one, Dark Ages, was like the art was great. The initial concept at the beginning kind of was neat, and then but it was just, in my opinion, just a flop.
Yeah. So
So
yeah.
it depends on the idea, and I kind of feel like that's the, my my thought on it is that it feels like when somebody comes up with a kooky idea in one of these writing houses, they sometimes go like, I like it, but I don't think it'll fit in there. So why don't you just go do a mini series
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and get that out of your system?
Yeah, which kind of gets me into my theory. I'm curious to see your thoughts on this. I think in my theory is that there's three main ways comics use alternate realities or alternate universes, whatever you want to call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the first way is just a one-off issue. Hey, here's evil hero. Let's see how he interacts in our universe, right? Like the main storyline 616 or whatever you want to call it. Like, for example, a great example of that is like Owlman in DC is like the evil Batman. Let's quickly throw him into the storyline, or Batman goes to an alternate reality, has to fight Owlman. It's like a one-off story type of thing.
Yeah.
The second way you can use alternate realities is if it's actually like integrated into your main storyline as like a consistent thing that happens. A great, especially when it's integrated into somebody's power. So, like you said, a great example of that is Wanda. She constantly does alternate reality stuff. Another great example of this is Invincible. Actually, there's a main villain in Invincible. Some people call him his number one villain, which is Angstrom Levy. And then his main power is that he can cross alternate realities, and then that causes a lot of hijinks in Invincible, which I know you haven't read yet, so I won't get into spoilers. But it's a main issue. And then the third way you use alternate realities is like the Ultimate Universe or Age of Apocalypse or Absolute from DC, where you create an entire alternate storyline where it's not just like a temporary thing. It's like, okay, let's see how everything changes across this storyline, and you kind of just let the writers do whatever they want with this new reality, and they can kind of have carte blanche. So what are your thoughts on that theory that there's the main three ways?
I agree with all of that. Okay. I think like a good example, like one of the series that I loved was actually a DC series, Deceased.
Yeah.
Now, if they would have taken that and just plunked it into the regular universe and said, we're attacking with call it what you want, but there were zombies.
Yeah.
We're going to attack with zombies. I think it would fly over like Bloodhunt did.
Yeah.
Like it would just be kind of like, what? But because you separate it and you go, hey, there's more of a buy-in, because it's not within, it's not contained within the standard or the expected run. Mm-hmm. So it's just easier to just go, yeah, I'll give over for 10 issues and believe that the heroes were wiped out by zombies, and there's zombie Superman, and all this stuff going on. It just allows a little bit of a creative outlet for some of these writers to just do something a little different. Mm-hmm. Same with the artists. And I really like when they cross over, when DC and Marvel put their fighting aside and they do crossovers. Like I've got a Batman Daredevil graphic novel, which is awesome. Yeah. Love it. Like those kinds of things where you will never ever see it in the day-to-day run of the mill of these comics. When they get together and they do something like that, it can be something special, and then there can be some bad ones.
Yeah, so I figured what we could do is, like, based on those three, types of ways to use alternate universe, we can kind of go through each one, talk about, like, our pros and cons of each one, some highlight moments, maybe from, like you said, Batman, Daredevil, team-up type of thing. And then at the final one, especially because we're going to talk about the Ultimate Universe, we can talk about our thoughts on the current Ultimate Universe, as well as, what we're enjoying there so far. So starting off with the first way they use alternate realities, which is, like, within the main story, have one issue where it's like, oh look, evil X showed up or something like that, or a great example of this for me was in Donny Cates' Venom run. There's a couple issues there where he goes to an alternate reality where I think Null wins or something like that, or mm-hmm. like Eddie Brock is dead or something like that. I can't remember what happens, but like it's just a temporary issue, and like the point of it is just to show like kind of like It's a Wonderful Life, like, hey, what you're going through right now is kind of crap, but like in this alternate reality, things could be so much worse. And like like you said, like Days of Future Past, like, okay, you don't want this to happen. Look how bad it can possibly get. Let's try to fix it, or do that. honestly, for myself, I'm not usually a fan of those type of storylines, only because I think sometimes
No.
it can really like ruin the pacing of your regular story of like just throwing in a random hey alternate universe adventure. Like I said,
Yeah.
there are some moments where it's pretty interesting and kind of shows the point of the story, but I find most of the times it's like we need something to happen just to fill issue numbers.
Yeah.
Let's go to an alternate reality.
Yeah, sometimes it just isn't like I would say an example of that would be where it was that short kind of crossover was the most recent run of Zeb Wells' Spider-Man,
Mm.
where he crosses over into another universe where this totem villain is basically destroyed everything, and then there's a fight, and then he comes back, and it was very. I found it very clumsy, just not very well executed. And for a superhero like Spider-Man, I hate when they take a guy that's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and then throw him out into the cosmos and he's doing all this stuff. But a good example of where it hit in the middle of a run was Old Man Logan,
Oh yeah, that was a
where
good
they
one.
did, where it was like the story that was going on in the current comic and it, like properly ended. They could have ended the series at that point, but then they switched over to this, Old Man Logan storyline, and it was great. Like it was a well executed. It was just I don't know, it was about 10 issues or so. They finished it off with a giant sized issue, and then picked up exactly where they left off with the other stuff. Didn't interfere with it. It was well
Mm.
done. And the art was great. The writing was great. It was a lot of fun. So it just I think it just depends on the character, the execution, what they're doing with it, how they're doing it. When they try to mix it in with the storyline that's currently going, I think sometimes that can get a little convoluted
Yeah.
and messy.
Yeah, most of the times, right?
Yeah.
You reminded me though, of when you mentioned the whole Batman Daredevil of like, oh, temporarily we're mixing universes or
Mhm.
whatever. Have you seen the increase in the amount of like Power Rangers X TMNT or TMNT X Batman? Have you seen all these
Yes.
happening the last couple years?
Oh yeah.
Have you read any of them? What are your thoughts on that?
I haven't read any of them.
Okay.
The only one that really actually kind of I was curious about was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Batman one.
Yeah.
That kind of stuck out to me. I mean, a good example of one from way back in the day. I think they did about 4 issues way back when Marvel Comics had both Transformers and GI Joe. They did a 4 issue stint. I think it was about 4 issues. Maybe it was a little longer of a crossover of those two universes. And like as a kid that grew up with Transformers and GI Joes, like yes, this is amazing. Uh, but as far as any of the newer stuff, like you see it all the time. I think the most recent one that I've seen where it's like outside of the DC Marvel would be like Spawn and Batman.
Mm.
There was a recent graphic novel that came out. I think it was the second one that they've done. It's a one shot. You take it for what it
Yeah.
is. It's usually got good art, and that kind of stuff. But I haven't gone into any of the other stuff.
Yeah, the one I recommend, which I actually may have that I could lend to you, like the TMNT Batman one wasn't bad. The one that was really good was TMNT Power Rangers, mainly because you got the Ninja Turtles in Power Ranger outfits, and then you had the Power Rangers getting mutated, and like the way they designed the characters was so cool, and like that alone was like, okay, hell yeah, brother.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
yeah,
did see. I want to say it was DC characters with Godzilla.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
going on right now, which is wild. Are there any like other franchises you would love to see mashed together temporarily? Like, hey, this will just be a good time type of thing.
Oh God. I mean, you could always have some of the old age fights of people just trying to decide who would win between like Darth Vader and some Marvel character. I mean, there's lots of room to play around with it. Again, it's just a question of like who does it. Is
Yeah,
the concept good? But I think a Star Wars something would be kind of interesting. Mainly because I just like to see like put to rest like okay, Darth Vader against whoever it is that
yeah.
people think that Darth Vader could just own, and then watch that not happen, like Darth Vader versus Batman.
Like the biggest issue with those is always like neither party wants to be the loser. Like
No.
one of the most famous crossover that I can think of is Freddy versus Jason. But you could
Yeah.
tell like both of them wanted to win, so it's like,
Hmm.
okay, who do you kind of like,
That's why you got to do like a. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on the Avengers versus Aliens,
yeah, that'd be
because
sick.
nobody really wants to see the aliens win. I mean,
No, no,
you can just kill them and crush them and do whatever you want to them. But it
it
looks like
looks
it would be a
dope.
lot of fun.
Yeah, it looks really good. So our second way, a very common way to utilize alternate realities is to build it into like a power system. Like some characters just have the ability to, jump between dimensions and stuff like that. Like I mentioned, a prime example of that is Invincible.
Yeah.
It's a very prevalent storyline, especially like I mean, Invincible goes through multiple storylines, but there's a definitely like multiple storylines that hinge on alternate realities and what it means to the characters and showcasing, oh man, if I had gone left down this road, it would have been a completely different situation, right? And it's a pretty
Mhm.
good way to use that. Have you ever like any standout that utilize alternate reality powers that you enjoy?
I think the only one that I really enjoyed was probably Blink from
Yeah,
the X-Men.
Exiles.
Yeah, from Exiles, because that was just again like another excuse just to
Hop through
do
realities.
yeah,
Yeah.
do whatever you wanted. And I don't think they used America very well in that
Yeah.
regard. Like I think there was a lot of potential there for them to do that, but they didn't. Outside of that, it's just not something that you just see a lot of. Like I think
Mhm.
the most common kind of constant dipping into different universes and realities is probably like if you read a lot of especially the older Fantastic Four stuff, like that it's just like happening every day. Like they were going somewhere else, whether it was within our own universe, just down to the micro level, or they were going into a completely different universe altogether. I've enjoyed the storylines, but again, it has to fit.
Mhm.
Fantastic Four, they could do it all day long for me, and it makes sense, and I'm okay with it. You turn around and do it with the Punisher, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit random. I mean, like you
Yeah,
said, while America Chavez was a little bit disappointing, man, a
yeah,
great one example of a great use is Across the Spider Verse and Into
yeah,
the Spider Verse. Man, I love those movies; they're amazing. I think it's one of those things, a great example of like how do they utilize alternate realities, even though like I said, like Spider-Man is not usually a character you associate with alternate realities, but I think like the way they use it in that movie again really showcases what makes that character great and puts them in different scenarios to be like, I mean, you have Spider-Man talking to Spider-Man and being like,
yeah.
hey, what do you deal with on a daily basis? Oh yeah, me too. It
And I,
sucks.
and I think that was like I'm glad you brought that one up, because I think with the Spider Verse, like within the comic writing, like whenever they made up these other versions of Spider-Man, whether it was Noir or Spider-Man 2099 or Peter Porker, whatever it was, like initially when some of those characters came out, you didn't think of it as a different timeline,
Mm,
right? Like I always thought of the 2099 as that's in the future,
yeah.
right? That's not another universe. And a lot of these other characters that just didn't think about it as a universe. And it was a neat way for when they kind of started bringing this stuff in. It was like they started grabbing all these characters that they'd done in like what if issues or just standalone comics and stuff, and started bringing them in, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
They're all in different universes, so there's okay. And then they just started going nuts,
Hmm.
coming up with all kinds. So I thought that was a great example of how it can be done, well within the story.
Hmm. Another one that actually just reminded me of was the whole story arc that Hickman did in Avengers right before Secret Wars, where it
Right.
was like the all the alternate realities are clashing into each other and destroying. I can't remember what he called it. Um,
Convergence.
Conversions, yeah, like it
Yeah.
was like a really big storyline of like, hey, we're all dealing with our street level crime, like Kingpin's doing his thing again, but by the way, an alternate reality is about to crash into us and we gotta just pause everything and deal with it. Then you had the whole Doom situation happen where he combined
Yeah.
all the universes, and that was, I mean, Secret Wars is one of our favorite crossover events that we've talked about, right? So
One of my favorite crossovers, and it really, like, I think that whole setup, especially with the Illuminati, just really made like some of the like leaderish figures in the various sides, like you can understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, and you're kind of rooting for it because you don't want 616 to go anywhere.
yep.
But at the same time, like to destroy an entire universe kind of like really made these guys like
Villains.
drop a level and
Yeah.
in morality, and in some cases, yes, absolutely villains.
Hmm. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Any other final thoughts on alternate reality powers?
No, like I said, it's not something that they use a lot. Like I think another good example of that would be the Richards boy.
Oh yeah, Franklin.
Yeah, when they tried to spin out of Onslaught, when they tried to restart like Heroes Reborn,
Hmm.
you know, you see it sometimes, and again, you know, even within that character, some of the stuff that they've done with him, like him creating this universe and hiding and protecting these superheroes to be Heroes Reborn, was really a neat kind of offshoot from Onslaught. But they've also done really poorly with that power within that comic as well. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I think it's something you got to be really, really careful with.
I mean, you bring up a good point, right? Like, there's definitely. I mean, look at Wanda, right? The entire, Wanda storyline is so convoluted sometimes, and like she
Yeah,
gets the short end of the stick so many times. But it's one of those things of like when you have a power that can honestly do almost anything, it's so hard to keep it in balance and not go absolutely crazy with it sometimes, right?
yeah.
It's a tough one. So let's get into the third big one, which is
Mhm.
building an entire universe where you bring in, hey, we're revamping the entire universe. Every single person on this plane of existence is going to be affected in some way. Like we mentioned before, some prime examples of that was like Age of Apocalypse was a really cool one.
Yeah,
House of M was a really cool one. Apparently, it's all X-Men related.
yeah.
But my
X-Men
personal
like to do it a lot.
X-Men like to do it a lot. But my personal favorite one that I really want to talk about is the Ultimate Universe.
Right.
So, I mean, we've talked about it a few times before. I got into comics partially because my dad liked superhero stuff. We watched Batman the animated series and stuff like that, and then this was right when the Marvel movies were getting good. You had the X-Men movies, you had the Spider-Man movies and stuff like that, and so superheroes were getting more and more prevalent. And so when I was doing the summer reading program at my local library, I completed a challenge. I read a certain amount of books, and the book I was given was Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, I know about Spider-Man. I've watched the 90s cartoon, everybody, I've seen the Tobey Maguire movie type of thing. So let's see how
Yeah.
this is and everything like that. And it was so, for me, as a new comic book reader, so nice to have just a clear starting point. Because
Yeah.
again, as a kid, especially, and my dad always said like, "Oh yeah, I read these comics all the time as a kid, but I have no idea where to start." It was so nice to have a clear starting point to be like, "Hey, start here, and then everything's new going forward, and you can kind of keep up with it." And then it was always like, me. I've never gone back to like issue 1 and tried to read Spider-Man issue 1 from the '60s, right? Like that's insanity. But like, it was very interesting having that clear starting point. I think that was the clear benefit of something like the Ultimate Universe. But what was your opinion on the Ultimate Universe when it was announced and coming out and stuff like that?
At first, I rejected it,
Hmm.
and then as it started to kind of move forward, I don't think it made it to issue 10 before I started getting into the Spider-Man one,
Hmm.
and it was because I picked up I picked up a couple of the issues. I read through them, and Bendis was just on his like incredible tear of like it didn't matter what he wrote
Yeah.
or what character he was dealing with, it was just a hit. And it really started diving in, like the amount of Bendis Ultimate Spider-Man issues you would read in Nazi Spider-Man was just ridiculous. Like because he just had a good touch on all the characters, all the supporting characters. It was a great opportunity to kind of relive some of the stuff. Like I was collecting comics when, say, for instance, the in the original universe, the Hobgoblin came around.
Hmm.
So to see the Hobgoblin reinvented the way they did it in the Ultimate Universe again, like, oh, when are they going to bring in Doc Ock? You know, when are they going to bring it? So that was a lot of fun. You had a great artist. You had Bagley. I think
Yep.
he did 100 issues plus. So it was just a great a great opportunity to kind of relive some of those moments of, are they going to kill Gwen Stacy again? Are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? Like, what are they going to do? And just the little changes to characters, Mary Jane not being, just a popular party head, is just, she's a bit of a bookworm, and you've just got, Gwen Stacy's a little bit of a kind of
Punk.
a punk badass,
Hmm.
like just these different nuances to the characters was just kind of made it interesting.
Hmm.
But when it got to, like, I thought the Ultimates was fantastic. um it was so refreshing, so different. I think it really modernized. I,
Oh
I
yeah.
think what happened in that comic really modernized what you're now seeing out of the Avengers, whether it's the movies, whether it's the comics. Um, the one I felt and I was really disappointed with was the X Men.
Mm.
They did some stuff okay, but then there was some other stuff that just fell flat for me. So again, it's just, I think overall it was, I was lukewarm to it, and then I grew to like it quite a bit.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And like you said, I think that like the main appeal of most like huge alternate universe plans like this when you come from Marvel or DC or anybody like that is just like how are they going to mix it up, right? Like you
Yeah,
said, oh okay, Craven's going to come in, in this next issue, oh he's like a reality TV star, that's
yeah,
hilarious, type of thing. And
yeah.
like they did that across the Ultimate Universe of just taking like tweaking it slightly or tweaking it completely different. You're like, what the hell's going on, type of thing.
Hmm.
As somebody who I think I read the entirety of the Ultimate Universe, there was definitely some ups and downs. The X-Men, like you said,
Hmm.
man, they swung big sometimes, and woof, did they miss?
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
think I think the nice part about it, like you said, is just like they had the freedom, the creative freedom to kind of do whatever they wanted with it, and you
yeah,
had the idea of let's modernize some things, which is really funny saying now because they still like didn't have smartphones back then, so like now it's like
yeah,
modernized, modernized for 2001, type of thing.
yeah.
But
Exactly.
but yeah, no. And then I think personally, it was really awesome after Ultimatum. I know everybody harps on Ultimatum for being, edge lord, whatever bullshit. I think after Ultimatum, when they rebranded to kind of Ultimate Comics, Spider-Man, Ultimate Comics, X-Men, so they did some really good stuff. Like especially Ultimate Comics X-Men, they did something called Reservation X, which in my opinion is kind of it really influenced Krakoa a lot. At least in my opinion. I mean, people can argue with me that, but anyways, I think, like you said, it's very interesting that they're able to remix things and have creative freedom. The downside is, for me at least, when I was reading almost every Ultimate book going on, there were some inconsistencies, and it was one of
Yeah,
those things of like, come on guys, you're supposed to be this like concise, story that's all interacting, all that stuff, but then like they'd have one comic where again Blob would be suddenly a good guy, and it's like, oh yeah, Blob learned to redeem himself, and then the next issue he's eating the wasp, and you're like, okay, what the hell, man?
yeah.
Like
What's going on?
what happened here? And like because they bring in new writers or artists, and they'd not give a shit and rewrite things. So but yeah, no, I really like expanded alternate realities and stuff. This is
Yeah,
definitely one of my favorites. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of examples. Especially nowadays, it's really interesting. I think we talked about this last episode, where it's funny how some of the best DC stuff right now is like Black Label and like all the alternate universe stuff that they're doing, and then their
yeah,
main to day comic books are kind of hit and miss.
yeah. No, it's interesting because I think with especially when you're looking at the two, I can't even call them top anymore because they're getting their asses handed to them by independent comics now all over the place. But the two bigger companies, it's always so interesting to see, like DC just always seem to be nailing it out of the park with these short run 6 to 10 issue kind of things where, whether it was the Dark Knight or like I mentioned earlier, Deceased, or whatever it was, these short little things, they were great, they were fantastic, but when they tried to do it in a larger scope of things, it was like just a mess and it didn't work. Whereas Marvel just never did the short run stuff, and even when they did, like I said, I could probably pull out of my collection a number of these things that were just garbage. Like they were just not great.
Hmm.
But when they wholesale went into it like they did with the Ultimate Universe, it landed well.
Hmm.
And I think the problem, and we'll get into the new Ultimate Universe, I guess you call it.
Yeah.
But I think the reason the ultimatum happened was because they took a look at it and they were like if you really looked at it, how far did they really start, after especially 100 issues of each one, how far did they actually stray from the norm of what these characters were and everything
Yeah.
else? And I think that's where ultimatum was just kind of like, let's blow this up and try to really change it and make it
Hmm.
different. And I think that's what they've done with the new one.
Yeah,
that they've now done with Hickman.
that's a really good point about Ultimatum and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I think that sets us up. So, like we kind of mentioned, the reason why we had this podcast is because this ended up being a pretty big year for those major alternate reality storylines, right? Like DC's Absolute Universe is just starting, so I haven't read anything yet. I've heard nothing but good things, so I'm very curious about it. Did you hear that apparently it's a universe designed by Darkseid?
Yes.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Like it's kind of like a dark twist to the universe.
Yeah, like it's I have to say, like, seeing some of the previews that I have seen, I haven't seen much on Wonder Woman, so I reserve any judgment on that because it's just I just haven't seen anything about it. But the Batman one, I've been kind of like waffly on because I don't know, it's just like it's and again, it's just so different from what I'm normally expecting out of a Batman comic. So I just like, until I have an opportunity to look at it, but the first kind of glance at it, it was kind of like, ugh. But the Superman one looks amazing.
Well, I think
whereas I'm like normal Superman, bleh. This Superman, okay.
Well, that's what happens when you give Jason Aaron the reins, right? Like you're gonna get some crazy shit going on. So we'll definitely. I'm very much looking forward to checking those out. But how have you been with the new Ultimate Universe? Have you been reading every issue across the whole thing, or are you just reading Spider-Man?
I read the original, whatever it was, 5-issue run where they set it up with Hickman. Yeah. I was confused as hell as to what he was doing, and then when they like, I thought, oh, okay, that was fun. That's over with. And then when they spun it out, and I was like, really, you guys are going to move forward with this? Like, it just seemed, the scope of it just seemed so large and so weird and so different. And that's what I was like, you know what, I'll check the Spider-Man one out.
Okay.
I'll check it out. And again, the big difference in what they did with the first Ultimate run and this one was, the first one was, I'm a kid, I get bit by a spider, blah, 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 blah. Here's the minor changes. This one, I'm a 30-year-old adult, married with kids. Yeah. And somebody comes on and goes, hey, you're supposed to be Spider-Man. Do you want to be Spider-Man? And you go, okay. Yeah. So right there, that's a completely different comic because you're coming at it from a different angle of like where they are in life. Yeah. As far as that, so I've been very happy with the Spider-Man one that I've seen so far. Yeah. I know some people have gotten a little testy when Hickman's been doing a little background development for some of the issues, and people have been like, I didn't even see Spider-Man in this issue. It's like, but okay, well then don't go read Ultimate Spider-Man with Bendis, because there were like 4 or 5 issues in a row where you didn't see Spider-Man. Yeah. So Spider-Man was great, and then I didn't pick up Black Panther. I'm kind of kicking myself now because I'm curious. I haven't seen it. I like the art, but I haven't gotten into that one. And then I've been reading the new Ultimates.
Okay, so you didn't touch X-Men, is what you're saying?
Didn't touch. That was probably my one that I looked at and I went, that is not an X-Men comic.
No. And that's most people's big complaint, and I would agree. I don't think you're gonna like it. It's very much aimed towards teenage weebs. Like it's very much a quote unquote X-Men manga is basically what it is. But so yeah, like you said, Ultimate Invasion, like you said, it was very confusing. No idea what the hell's going on, but at least it set up the world, and it set up the idea of like most of the heroes just didn't happen, and now you have Howard Stark and the Maker trapped for however X many years. What's going to happen in between then as we go through? I mean, what did you think of the whole idea of like the world is split up into like these different evil cabals and stuff like that?
Well, it just like where I saw this, like they swung big because they were like, let's not just be like, oh, it's the Ultimate Universe, it's kind of like our world, but the characters are a little different. It was like, no, we're going to just change the world entirely. So it really gave me an Age of Apocalypse vibe.
Yeah, I can see that.
But instead of having one central villain that's got like a couple villains running come to the areas, this is like independent villains running each of the areas, and then they come together to plot the demise of everybody else and whatever. And it was like, I think he did some things with that, like making Captain Britain French.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the best part.
Like just stingingly like I hate this,
Yeah.
and I hope I hate this guy. I hope he gets his comeuppance at some point. I like the fact that he's just like he's really with the overall world has just gone. Let's swing for the fences and just really mess stuff up.
Yeah, my issue with it, I agree with you. At the beginning, it seemed like they're swinging for the fences. I feel like over the last few months, it feels like it's stagnated a little bit. At least that's my opinion on it. In the
Yeah,
sense of
no,
like, it seems so different at first, but now, other than Spider Man, most of them are pretty like cut and dry. And maybe that's just because there's only like 4 or 5 ongoing stories type of thing.
yeah,
For example, like Ultimates, like you said, I really liked the when they go to the White House and they, I think it's America Chavez is supposed to be who they're freeing type of thing. I
mm-hmm.
thought that was really cool and that was really storyline. But then everything else around the Ultimates was like, okay, there's Thor, there's Iron Man, there's Captain America. It's kind of cut and dry, same thing, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, like I said, X-Men, I don't think you would like it at all, but I definitely think there is an audience for that X-Men. And I think, like
yeah,
you said, the biggest issue for it is the fact that they called it X-Men. And it's like,
yeah,
it definitely feels more like a New Mutants or like one of those like sub younger teams. I feel like would
yeah,
be much better. But there's definitely some good things going on. And Peach Momoko art is really cool.
yeah.
Black Panther for me is the biggest disappointment, only because it feels so much like regular Black Panther. Like
Oh, really?
to me, it's like it feels a lot like that Ta-Nehisi Coates run, where
Mm-hmm.
it's trying to deal with like the politics of Wakanda and stuff like that.
Right.
But then it ends up being pretty much it's just T'Challa. The T'Challa doesn't feel any different. The only one that's kind of at least significantly different is like Killmonger. Killmonger is more
Yeah.
of a good guy, right? So it's interesting going there. But like Moon Knight's being the evil leaders of Africa, that sounds really cool, but then they end up kind of just being generic Black Panther villains. So it's like maybe they'll mix it up and it'll change it. But so far, it feels very generic in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm leery of the Ultimate Wolverine coming out.
Yeah. Well, I like the
It
costume. I
just
like the costume a
the
lot.
costume looks cool. It's just kind of like again, it's like I'm surprised. I'm surprised and I'm not surprised they went with Wolverine. But again, we'll see.
Yep.
You can't judge it at this point because there hasn't been an actual issue released.
Mhm.
But I don't know if the slow burn of bringing out new characters under the Ultimate label is good or bad because like for me the two issues that I read right now, like the Ultimates has been like it's
Mhm.
okay. I've enjoyed the Spider-Man one. Like I said, hadn't read the Black Panther, but it doesn't sound like it's really differentiated itself very much. The X-Men differentiated itself too much.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see as it keeps going if the momentum keeps going or if this ends up shutting down after 12, 25 issues or whatever it ends
Mhm.
up.
No, that's a really interesting point about where it's going. Right, we'll get there in a second. Let's circle back a little bit to
Mhm.
Spider-Man, Black
Yeah,
Panther. Make sure to check out a couple issues. I'm curious, maybe I'm wrong. I'm curious what you think of it. But for Spider-Man, I think you were right in the sense of like this is definitely like the flagship one,
yeah,
especially in the sense of like it's Hickman. So of course this was all his idea, and I bet you was like, hey, I just want to give me Spider-Man. I'll take care of Spider-Man, type of thing. But no, it's like you said, just the subtle change of he's already an adult with adult problems, 2 kids and a wife. That change enough is just like wow, this is such a different breath of fresh air when it comes to Spider-Man and different, right? I love the artwork's amazing.
yeah,
Chichetto's is so good.
yeah,
I really like the idea of Harry also having his superpower moment. Not that he has powers, but like
yeah,
him also becoming a superhero and going like, hey, we're both like 40-year-old or 30-year-old married guys. How are you doing it? Oh, I'm doing it this way. Let's help each other out and kind of like
yeah,
figure out what's going on. And then
yeah,
like I love Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy in this. I think they're both like just really fascinating characters. I hope they continue to develop them. And then like having his kids being like, oh yeah, my dad's a superhero, I guess. Like
yeah.
especially the daughter was really interesting. Again, my biggest issue with it is like where is it going? Because I think there's a lot of really dark storylines you could do with this, like What if somebody finds out his identity and goes after his family, which was always an issue in the original Spider-Man, but this is different because he has kids. Or
Yeah.
what if he gets really hurt and it, like, really impacts their personal life, right? Like,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on more thoughts on Spider-Man there?
Uh, I think they're, in my opinion, I think they're moving eventually to Harry becoming a bad guy.
Which makes sense.
Which makes sense. I like what they did with the Kingpin.
Hmm.
Like he just walloped. Like it's
Yeah.
not the same guy. Um, you're right. I like the dynamics of the characters. I think they did a huge fan service for followers like myself of Spider-Man for years who have been like, can you just get Peter and Mary Jane back together again,
Yep.
please? Like this is absurdity within the mainstream of the comic is just getting ridiculous. Like, just get them together. Stop making her a superhero. This is jackpot stupid.
Yeah.
Like, and they've shown you like what they could have done and how well it works.
Yep.
Especially allowing them like let them have kids and
Yeah.
let them have a relationship. And it's just it's very like refreshing from that aspect. The fact that that Aunt May is dead and Uncle Ben's alive.
Yep.
That Peter Parker and J. Jonah Jameson get along.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's just so many different aspects that are just tiny tweaks that just I don't know for some reason work.
Hmm.
And I think moving forward, I think as they introduce more stuff, like they've already introduced, like they're bringing in what looks like the Sinister Six, but it's not the Sinister Six that we remember.
Hmm.
There's a bunch of different people in this, so it's very interesting. I just don't know how. Like I read this and I'm like I'm hooked. I'm in.
Yeah.
Like this is great, but then I know this bigger plot with the makers floating out here, and I'm just like
Yeah.
I don't know how the hell that's going to work with someone like Spider-Man. Whereas the Ultimates seem very fixated on what's going to happen when the maker comes back.
Yeah.
So it's just that's where I'm very curious to see like what are they going to do with this? What I consider a very well done alternate universe Spider-Man in this very off kilter weird universe that they've created.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And you did also bring up the fact that like they're only slowly introducing more lines to this alternate reality.
Yeah.
Like you said, like Ultimate Wolverine's only coming out like next month, I think, like that. I'm
Yeah.
I'm surprised they waited this because again, when they launched the original Ultimate Universe, I mean, at least they had so they did Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four, Ultimates. So I guess they only did like 4 or 5, but those felt like big enough that they encompassed majority of the Marvel universe. I definitely feel like, especially because X-Men is so different than what you expect from X-Men, it feels like they could have introduced more alternate reality versions of like who's somebody else you feel like they could really introduce and get into here.
Well, like to me, it made sense that you went like X-Men, obviously big name,
Mm-hmm.
right? What they did with it, different story. Spider-Man, obvious. Black Panther surprised me.
Yeah.
That was one of the flagships that they were like, hey, we're going to start this new universe and it's going to start with Black Panther. Not that Black Panther isn't great. He's just not at the top of everybody's, list of just recognizable superheroes that people know a lot about because outside of, I'm going to say the movies, people don't know a lot about him. So that was a bit of a surprise. The Ultimates made sense. It's basically the Avengers.
I just wish they had mixed up the team more. Is what I would.
Yeah, like the whole Reed Richards is Doom, and spoilers for anybody who hasn't read it. Reed Richards is Doom, and Iron Man is basically like Iron Lad.
Yeah.
And but they're still the same. Like they just introduced the most recent issue. I read issue 5. I just finished reading it actually. They introduced Hawkeye.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and Hawkeye's First Nations descent person who actually found the suit that they had intended for somebody else and just took it and decided to be Hawkeye.
That's cool.
So it's like they're slowly introducing more members, but it's like they're still the same members. Like it's still like, oh, you got your Hawkeye. Is that okay? Where's the Scarlet Witch coming? Like it's just they really haven't. I don't think varied it enough. I think as far as a comic, I would love to see like a character that hasn't shown up in any of them yet. I'd like to see Daredevil.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Would be kind of cool because they've already got Thor in Ultimates. They've already got Captain America in Ultimates. Iron Man's in Ultimates. Yeah, that's the one.
Another one I think would be really, especially if you're considering the fact that like for the Maker, it was all about like let's get rid of the heroes and like the different levels and stuff like that. I'm surprised they didn't do Ultimate Doctor Strange because I feel like they don't really have like who's dealing with the magic system, you know? And I feel like that's definitely a big thing, especially for the Maker is very much a science guy. Like how did he handle like because again he kind of removed everybody's powers or source of powers or whatever. You know, what did he do for magic and how did that impact Doctor Strange or whoever would have taken up the mantle of Sorcerer Supreme? I think that's a really cool one that they should introduce slash why haven't they introduced, you know, type of thing.
Yeah, and I would say like to take that even further, like you've already had a bunch of people introduced, but like not really.
Yeah.
Like in the Ultimate Invasion, like okay, you've got Colossus.
Yeah. Evil Russian.
Apparently he's a dick.
Yeah.
Don't like, but they haven't introduced why.
Yep.
Like why he chose to go down that road. Why is the Hulk the way he is?
Yeah, that's a big
like,
one. Yeah.
Like there's a whole bunch of characters that are there, but you just don't know anything about them.
Mm-hmm. And again, I'm just surprised that they didn't like when they started this, especially like you said, there's the big hanging. The Maker's going to return soon. I think it was supposed to be like 1 year type of thing of like trapped or something like that. So it's like I'm surprised they were so this slow dripping, you know, everybody coming out. I thought it'd be very much like bam, bam, bam. Here's all the heroes you expect with the ultimate twist, you know, type of thing. And so I'm just surprised by that. So yeah, the Maker potentially going to return soon. Like what are your expectations? Are you hoping for that to happen within the next year, or like would you want it to?
I'm hoping
extend
not
it later?
because like the Ultimates really hasn't really like it basically it's been like we're collecting members. Every issue has been just hey we're collecting members of the team, and that's it. So there hasn't been any kind of like other than this clock ticking, which I don't even know what that means. Like okay, he comes back. Well, okay, you've had a year to mobilize and get your shit together.
Where we at?
I don't know.
Exactly right.
So I think that's why like with the Ultimates I've been kind of like, whereas like where Spider-Man it just feels like there's been just a good story there.
Yeah. And then the other big thing too is the original Ultimate Universe went on for what 10 to 15 years, something like that. It was a long time. So it's so weird that they would have done this whole hey we have a time limit, and maybe what they'll do is like the Maker will come back, all the heroes will be assembled, and then they defeat the Maker, and then it's like okay what do we do after that? Maybe is kind of their plan. But like how long do you expect this Ultimate Universe to kind of last? I don't see it lasting 10 to 15 years. That seems crazy.
I don't see it lasting that year, which is too bad because you've got like so far you've got a good comic in Spider-Man, an okay comic, not great comic in Ultimates, maybe not so great in Black Panther. Like it doesn't sound like they're just really X-Men's been like it's very niche.
Yep.
So they're really not knocking it out of the park like they did with the original Ultimate Universe. So I think it's going to be one of those things we're looking at in a couple of years going, well, that was fun.
Yeah.
Because I just don't think it's got the legs that the old one did.
Yeah, which is sad. I mean, like, here's hoping. I mean, we can be completely wrong, doing this again in a year or something like that. We talk about this and it's still going, or a couple of years, it's still going strong, right?
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, but I definitely think, like, as somebody, again, who loves those alternate reality, full-fledged universe things that really enjoy that, I'm looking forward to see what they can do. I mean, the other thing that the original Ultimate Universe never really got to do was the cosmic side of it. Like they kind of in Ultimate Invasion they kind of hinted at like a weird Kang thing happening with Iron Man, I guess. But like Ultimate Guardians of the Galaxy would be cool.
Yeah, they did do a Galactus thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I guess
a mini series thing like that was like
yeah.
It was weird. Like the two best series I would say again miniseries or three that came out that I enjoyed in Ultimate Universe. I thought the Sinister Six comic that they did was a 6-issue run where Spider-Man actually became a part of the Sinister Six was fantastic. Great art, great story. I loved the Ultimate War between Avengers and X-Men.
That was cool.
That was great. And then when they did Ultimate Power, where they introduced Squadron, the world of the Squadron Supreme against the Ultimate, like again, that was great. Like it was just a really well done thing back in the day. That just, I think they just, for whatever reason, they took their hands off the wheel and stopped looking at the road, and the next thing you know, it was over.
Yeah, ultimatum. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like we said, we'll see what happens in the next couple years. I mean, I'm interested to see what they do. And then yeah, for the DC one, I'm super excited to check it out. I mean, they've already announced, like for DC again, it's very interesting that they had their initial 3, but they've already announced, hey, don't worry, we have the Flash coming, we have Green Lantern coming, we have all their mainstay coming. But then it's interesting that they're doing that route, whereas Marvel's like, no, we're sticking with the 4 for now, and we'll see what happens, type of thing.
Yeah.
So,
and we can't be remiss in mentioning probably their most lucrative alternate universe that they've created in the MCU.
What? No, Dave, they said it was 616. What are you talking about?
Shut up.
Yeah, I was so mad when they said that. But yeah, no. I mean, that's the funny part, right? Like, as comic book fans, again, we're used to that type of stuff of, here's the main canon storyline. When they do TV shows, when they do movies and stuff like that, it's its own thing, type of thing. So it's so funny that Disney just had to be like, no, this is 616. What are you talking about? But
yeah, it's regardless, it's its own thing, because it doesn't follow any kind of cohesive connection to the comics or anything else. It's its own thing, and I think again, it had its amazing run, very much like the Ultimates, or the Ultimate Universe. It's like they had their everything was hitting, everything was going, and now all of a sudden you had some trips and some falls, and now you have to bring in Robert Downey Jr. Although I have to say, I've watched the trailer for the Thunderbolts. I think it's going to be pretty fun.
Dude, we'll have to do a podcast about like looking forward to 2025. But that Thunderbolts, man, that was scratching that Marvel itch, I have to admit. Captain America Brave New World, we'll see what happens. But Thunderbolts, that looks pretty freaking good, man.
Yeah, the Thunderbolts looks good. And I've been surprised at how much I've enjoyed. And I don't know if it's just kind of mind-numbing, just something is in front of my eyes. But Agatha all along has been actually interesting enough that I keep going like, oh, I want to see what happens in the next episode. So I would put it on not on the same level as WandaVision, but it has that same kind of like, I don't understand what's going on here, or I don't know where this is going. Yeah. So I want to see the next episode kind of vibe to it.
Yep.
But who knows? Maybe they got their shit together.
Hey, don't hold your breath. No. We'll see
that. Till then, I'll keep reading the Ultimates and comic books.
Any final thoughts on alternate universes in comics? Any final thoughts?
I would just say, I mean, I never say no, but it just really, really depends on the idea, how they pitch it, how they put it together. There's some really good ones out there that, I mean, we could go through a massive list of them, both on DC and Marvel side. But just the same, there's probably just as many bad ones. So, if you are somebody that's looking at it and going like, I don't want to get into the main storylines, but I want something short and concise and maybe something a little different, like do your research and make sure you're picking up something good, because there's a lot of minds out there that you're going to encounter.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I agree. Like I said, I love alternate universe stuff. It's really fascinating, and sometimes it's even better than the main line, which is hilarious enough, right?
Yes,
I mean, just look at Miles Morales. So there you go. Yeah, thank you so much for everybody for listening. We really appreciate it. Make sure to follow us wherever you found this podcast, be that YouTube, Spotify, all the awesome podcast plays. Our next issue, which always my favorite personal episodes that we do, which is our favorites of the year, will be next month. I'm super hyped for it. I've been thinking about this all year, so I'm very excited for it. I'm very curious to see what Dave's list is. But yeah, make sure to follow us, and that will be our next episode, and we'll see you all next time.
See you later.